Assalamu alaikum and hello viewers. Today we'll talk about realist theory of international relations. I mean political realism and IR. Realism, it is one of the oldest, most discussed and most dominant theory in the history of international relations. We have all the ancient, medieval and the modern thinkers and theoreticians in this field of political realism. If we take start from the ancient times, we have Thucydides in the Greece, even in the BC era. What political realism is, we will talk about it, but so far if you have not subscribed my channel, please do subscribe this channel and press the bell icon to be informed with my new video uploads. Political realism mainly talks about the power politics. It says that states, they want to maximize their power, and there is a constant competition and international system among the states. The principal and the most important unitary actor, that is the state. So there is no regard for the international organizations and morality. There is a significant difference between the universal morality and the political morality. So realists, they don't consider any universal moral considerations in a political action. So that's why states, they are the supreme and it is the unitary actor, that the unit of analysis for political realists, that is the states. Another, that here it is derived from the human nature, that it is egoistic, self-interested, self-centered, and it has lust for power, just like Thomas Hobbes has described. And the international system, that is anarchic, that there is no supranational authority, no world government or no international organization which can make laws and impose these laws on the actions of the states. So there is no break on the actions of the states and international system. Only states are responsible for their survival. There is self-help system in international politics, that every state that is in struggle for power only to get its security and get its survival. Survival is the most important thing for the states. All these things, it gave rise to competition and also the conflict among the states. Then states, they go to war not only to maximize their power but also to safeguard their sovereignty, and all of their actions, those are based on the national interest, and this national interest then already is based on the human nature. Thucydides, Greek historian, has described very famous the account of wars between the Sparta city-state and the Athens city-state in the 431 BC to 404 or 405 BCE. And all this account, what he has observed and seen, he described in his book, which is called History of the Peloponnesian War. He has described the competition and the conflict and the war between the two leagues. One was led by Sparta city-state and another was led by the Athens city-state. He has also mentioned about very famous Melian dialogue. So all these things revolve around the power politics and the power consideration of the international relations. So even he doesn't consider any moral consideration and morality in this regard. Only power matters while safeguarding the sovereignty and survival of the state. After that, there is also Chinese ancient political philosopher in terms of realist school of thought, and that is Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu has written a book, The Art of War, and he has also advised to the military generals and also the rulers of China how to use power to subjugate own public and have to win the war. That's why even going to war, that is very much feasible and even moral in the language of political realism for a state. Then we have Niccolo Machiavelli, and Machiavelli, he was Italian political philosopher. He has written a book, The Prince, and he says that it is not important for the prince, I mean for the king, to be good with the people, but rather to seem benevolent. So a kind of deception is there in political actions. Anyone brutal force can be used while to retain its power and the boundaries of the state. So realism, it talks about the parameters of the power politics and all these things related to the maximization and preservation of the power. So in the language of classical political realism or classical realist school of thought in international relations, politics, that is the end of a political action. So all states, they want to gain the power. Why? Because they consider the attainment of power as a requirement and essential for their own survival and security. And modern day political philosopher, also we have the Thomas Hobbes, who was British English political philosopher, and he has written a book, The Leviathan, and he also talked about the human nature, which is egoistic, self-centered, it has lust for power. And many scholars, they also believe that what era Thomas Hobbes lived there in Britain, there was a series of the civil wars. So that's why it also has impact on the mentality and philosophy of Thomas Hobbes. So he is considered as one of the main scholars of political realism and the realist school of thought and international relations. It also talks about the balance of power. So balance of power is essential not only to gain more power, but also to survive in international politics. If we see the European history, that is a series of the balance of power, especially after the defeat of the Napoleon Bonaparte of France, when there was a system called the Concert of Europe, established in 1815, and then it eroded with the start of the First World War in 1914. So 99 years, this balance of power system was there in the Europe. So some states, they joined one alliance, and some states, they joined another alliance. They wanted to be part of either alliance. That's why then they just wanted to balance the European international system and the European power politics. There are two aspects in the balance of power. One, that is the balancing, and another, that is the bandwagoning. So when there is a rising, threatening, powerful states, then small states, they join together against the powerful state, that is the balancing. But when a small weak state wants to join a powerful state for its security, to be survived in international system, to gain something, then that is called bandwagoning. So we have seen in the European politics and even today in the world politics that some weak states, they join together against the powerful state, but some states, they want to join a powerful state. So the main purpose is to get security. So this security is the main element of political realism, and that is foremost goal for the states to follow in the anarchic state of nature and the anarchic international system. So we have seen this balance of power in the Concert of Europe system for almost 100 years. Then the First World War happens. After that, we have other political realists in this regard, classical political realists. We have E.H. Carr, who has written a book, The 20 Years Crisis. He criticizes the Woodrow Wilson 14 points, and he also criticized the establishment of the League of Nations, which could not stop and halt the way of Nazi Germany and the Hitler. Half Hitler was brutal, and half he was one of the main responsible persons to start the Second World War. We have also in this connection, we have Hans-J. Margenthau, who is also considered as a classical realist in this regard. He has written a book in 1948, Politics Among Nations, Struggle for Power and Peace. And in that book, he has also mentioned about the power politics, that how do states they go to war, what is the main purpose. And in that book, he has also described about the this political realism, and he has given the name in the shape of 6 principles of the political realism. And the first principle in this regard, that is that politics, like a society in general, is governed by some objective laws. So what are those laws? Of course, those laws based on power, those laws based on the self-interest, those laws based on the maximization of power and security. So all these laws will be made if they serve and suit the political actions of a state. The second principle of political realism described by Hans-J. Margenthau is that centrality of the concept of interest that is defined in terms of power. So national interest is the guiding principle of international politics. There is nothing above the national interest. Everything and every political action behind the maximization of power and behind any action that is the national interest. So national interest, that is the foremost and the main objective, main concern of any state to gain and to preserve an anarchic international system. And the third, that is the nature of power can change, but the concept of interest remains constant. So there are various kinds of power, economic power, military power, the power of technology, and so many others, the power of resources, and even the soft power, hard power, and even the smart power. So hard power, it is the military power mainly considered, and the soft power, that is not the military power but the power of ideas, power of the cinema, power of literature, the power of knowledge, and so many other means of the soft projection of image for the state. And smart power, that is the combination of both a hard power and the soft power. So states, they use all these three kinds of powers. In political realism, especially in classical realism, the main thing, of course, that is the hard power. So the concept of interest that remains constant in international politics. Yes, the dynamics and the shape, the nature of power, it can change with the passage of time if it suits the interest of the state, but the main concern of the state, that is the national interest. So national interest, it remains there, it is permanent, it is constant. And the fourth point of the 6 principles of political realism mentioned by Hans-J. Margenthau, that is the universal moral principles do not govern state behavior but interest. So there is a difference between the moral humanity and also the political humanity. So moral principles, they have no space in classical political realism, and the state behavior are not behavior is not governed by the universal moral principles, rather governed by the interest. So if interest serves an action of a state, it will be followed. The fifth point is that no universally agreed set of moral principles. States, they make moral principles. States, they abrogate and they stop and make an end to the moral principles. So that is why there is no universality for the moral principles. Even the human intervention based on the human violations, the human rights violations in many countries, even that is debatable. Some countries and some international organizations, they say that it is must, but on the other hand, it also erodes the sovereignty of the state. That is why there is no universally agreed set of moral principles for the states. The sixth and the last point mentioned by Hans J. Margenthau, that is, politics is a separate sphere of human activity. So just like we have so many disciplines in fields in our lives, same is the case with the politics, and politics, whether that is the domestic politics or international politics, that has a separate value and significance, and it is a separate sphere of human activity. So far, dear viewers, it was about the classical realism or classical realist school of thought, the classical realist theory of international relations. We will discuss about the new realism or structural realism, and also the neoclassical realism after that in my new upcoming videos. Keep watching, stay in touch, and good luck. Take care.